Tonight, we remember the late President George H.W. Bush as the former president's family accompanies his body back to Washington. Plus this.
New data from the Secretary of State runoff shows us that this runoff election might not be as close as the one in November. Coming up, I'll show you what this building has to do with Georgia's history.
This is Northeast Georgia's only local source for TV news. From the Grady College at the University of Georgia, this is Grady Newsource.
Good afternoon and welcome to Grady Newsource. I'm Cheyenne Brown.
And I'm Kristen Rary. Thanks for being with us. Remembering former President George H.W. Bush, the body of the 41st president is now in Washington, where admirers will pay their respects until Wednesday morning. This is a video from moments ago of the Capitol Rotunda, where the late president will lie in state. Americans from all walks of life will have the opportunity to file past his casket with an honor guard close by. The body arrived in the rotunda in the last half hour. Over the next few days, Americans will witness the grandeur reserved for those who have led our country. Earlier today, the Bush family accompanied the late president's body from Houston to the nation's capital. President Trump dispatched his plane to bring them to Washington. The plane arrived at Joint Base Andrews at 3:45.
We've spent the day looking into Mr. Bush's legacy.
I spoke to students on campus about the former president and his impact.
I want a kinder and gentler nation, like 1,000 points of light in a broad and peaceful sky.
Students at UGA are mourning the president.
So I'm actually from Texas, so I've kind of seen more of the impact that he's had on just ordinary people, and I think his passing is very sad, and I know he'll be missed.
In a show of solidarity, politicians from across the political aisle are rallying together to mourn the former president.
As an elected official, and none had more class and a greater sense of decency than President Bush.
A very special person. I spoke with Jeb and George today, and we had great conversation.
Former President Obama showing his support through a tweet alongside former President Clinton. The president was known throughout his career as a pragmatic, logical conservative who placed immense value on home and country. As for the end of his life, he was surrounded by family.
And 43 said, "I love you, Dad, and I just want to, and I'll see you in heaven." And 41 said, "I love you too." And those were the last words that he ever spoke.
Viewing at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda will be open to the public starting at 7:30 tonight until 7 a.m. on Wednesday.
Georgia's runoff election is tomorrow, and Democrat John Barrow is facing Republican Brad Raffensperger for Secretary of State. Grady Newsource reporter Erin Valley has been looking into early voting.
That's right, Cheyenne. Now, tomorrow is Election Day, so y'all go out and vote if you haven't yet. Now, early voting ended on Friday, and I've got some new data that shows us people aren't showing up and voting in this election like they did in November. Republican State Representative Brad Raffensperger and former Democratic Congressman John Barrow both ran for Secretary of State last month. But when Libertarian candidate Smythe Duval earned over 2% of the vote, no one got over the 50% threshold. Barrow has the endorsement of former candidate Duval, but Raffensperger has been endorsed by President Trump. Data from GeorgiaVotes.com shows that this runoff might not be as close as last time.
It's not like a popular kind of voting Tuesday where everybody's knowing about it. I would say I probably wouldn't have known about it unless somebody had told me about it last week.
And that might be true for more than just UGA student Scotty Morris. For one, the turnout to vote early in the runoff is only half of what it was for early voting in the general election. And the study shows that black voters have turned out in fewer numbers compared to last month, putting Barrow at a disadvantage. Kayla Yamini, president of NAACP at the University of Georgia, says the black community feels discouraged after Democratic nominee Stacey Abrams lost the gubernatorial election. It was like we did everything that we were supposed to. We came out and voted. We told everybody that they should come out and vote, and it didn't turn out the way that we wanted to. Now, Democratic candidate John Barrow will be in Athens tonight campaigning at the Athens-Clarke County Board of Elections. Erin Valley, Grady Newsource.
The Georgia Bureau of Investigation and the Jackson County Sheriff's Office are assisting the Arcade Police Department in hopes of finding a missing teenager. Police say a 14-year-old, Lila Tuttle, was last seen walking on Athens Highway near the arcade of PD in Jefferson, Georgia, around 8 a.m. yesterday. She was wearing black pants, a green jacket, black ribbed glasses, and a backpack. The department is encouraging anyone with information to call 911. Every year, thousands of people lose money to telephone scams, from a few dollars to their life savings. Grady Newsource reporter Ashley Buddha tells us that what you can do to identify and avoid these scams.
How low can phone scammers go? As low as pretending to be a loved one in trouble. That's what Barbara Elliott experienced when she received a call from someone pretending to be a lawyer collecting bail money for her grandson. Here's what the scammer said.
If I could send the money within 2 days, then he would be free.
But her grandson, Christian Elliott, who was also impersonated on the phone, wasn't actually in any trouble at all.
I got a call from my grandma, and she's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just leaving class. What's going on?" And she was like, "So you're not in Florida and you didn't get a DUI?" And I was like, "No, like, where are you getting this information from?"
Barbara Elliott did not send money to the scammers, but not everyone is so lucky.
The town I live in, there was another grandmother who went through with the $2,400 that they wanted. She sent it.
There are red flags to help you spot these scams.
When your phone rings and it looks like a local call, you may be more tempted to pick up. Scammers count on this and are really good at faking caller IDs. They can even match the first 6 digits of your phone number, which is called neighbor spoofing.
You can register your phone number with the National Do Not Call Registry. For Grady Newsource, I'm Ashley Buddha.
All right, bye.
Reporting scams to federal agencies helps them collect evidence for lawsuits against scammers. You can contact the Federal Trade Commission. You can also report the scam to your state consumer protection office.
The history of Georgia is deeply rooted in its churches, and many of these historic sites stand today. Grady Newsource reporter Maddie Ray takes us to one of them.
Decorated with intricate stained glass windows. These are a few common features of what are considered to be historic rural churches.
These churches are important to us because they tell us so much about early Georgia. These churches were, of course, places of worship. They were internet cafes of the day. This is where the community would come to get news of the outside world.
There are still more than 200 historic rural churches across the state, each holding their own stories of Georgia's past.
You can see these headstones around me, these beautiful marble headstones. We have Revolutionary War veterans here. We have a governor of Georgia here, a Secretary of State, a Secretary of War is buried here. Ex-slaves are buried here.
Jeff Clark is a historian and the host of the GPB series Saving Grace. Its mission, to serve as a reminder.
These churches meant so much to early Georgians, and I think they're a wonderful well to draw from to let us constantly reinterpret the past, to reinterpret that history, who these people were.
Beth Salem was founded in the 1700s.
This is one of the most prominent historic rural churches in the entire state. This one is important because it is one of the oldest. It is one of the best maintained, and the historical value of it.
Clark says churches like Beth Salem need to be preserved.
Once they're gone, and I think that would be a sad day for all of us.
There are a few qualifications for becoming considered a rural historic church. It has to be in an area where around 1,500 or less people live, has to be a church no matter the fare, and something significant had to happen there.
Learn how to reduce your waste this holiday season and how to keep your family safe.